Welcome back to our latest episode of Mindful Matters Podcast. It is a pleasure to have you, and it's a pleasure to be here with my awesome co-host, Richard Haggerty, coach of coaches, great friend, an inspiration always. I always hear about your stories, the ones behind the curtains. It's not we don't hide much. It's just we start chatting even before we press the record button. And it's always fun catching up with you, Richard. Good to have you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Oresztesz. Wonderful. And likewise, to everyone listening, please like and subscribe to Less Anxiety Today channel here and let us know how much you're enjoying it, because Oresztesz is a world-class coach and hypnotist, and we want to help as many people as we can. So the more people know about this, the more we can help deal with the mindful matters that are on your mind, because honestly, sometimes it only requires the smallest wedge to be able to transform something. And we can maybe help you to spot and notice a wedge that you can open. It might just happen naturally as you listen here. Or there are people, including us, via the comments here, who you can reach out to, who can help you to grow. And so it's very exciting to be here. I always look forward to Oresztesz.
Thank you. And that's a very interesting word you use there. The smallest wedge. The smallest wedge can already begin a transformation, and that is just so common that people, at least the clients that I see, way too often they fall into this trap of trying to do everything at once, trying to do too many things, trying to take a step that's too big. Sometimes I even get resistance when I work with a client. Sometimes I have to have them really focus down their problem into one little specific situation where it's represented. Now, why is this so important? Because when I work with someone, it's and of course I know you too, but I'm not gonna speak for the both of us. The thing is, it's very interesting that there's so many things that are going on with us as human beings. Our minds have so many tasks that are taken care of. It's thinking about things, it's remembering other things, it's used to certain ways of being, it has habits, it has thought patterns, it's perceiving many details around us, from the circumstances, from the voices, from the tone of the person talking, from their facial expressions, from the pauses that they make. So it's insane just how much information our mind processes. So when I hear a generalization, which is, "Oh, I'm just so unlucky. I'm depressed all the time." These generalizations are usually way beyond of something that you can at any point fix. What you need to fix is a specific, precise moment in time where you can look at the exact thought patterns, the memories that seem to be relevant for your unconscious, the thoughts, the rules that your mind believes, the beliefs in general that you have about the world, about your own self. So that's where we can do something. That's where we can take a look. And I really, by the way, I'm also making a wedge here. I don't know if that's just unconscious. Um, that is absolutely the best way in which you can ever consider making some kind of an intervention. Now, as I'm saying it, I also remember that, whenever for example, whenever my wife is trying to, get some ideas into our children's minds, I also hear her many times talk about generalities, and I already see the kids just zoning out. It's like, okay, yeah, well, here is another lecture, here's another, long speech about something. When what really matters, what really makes an impact, is a specific story. The specific vision is a specific idea, and that's why I thought that expression of using a wedge smallest wedge can be a great catalyst for change.
Lovely, beautiful, Oresztesz. Well, look, I do, and actually, now you mention it, it's more the way I work now with clients, but also for myself, which is to spend maybe 70% of the time listening to them and asking questions where my curiosity is at. How do they have this problem? And I realized this when I was working with lots of people to get on with a fear of flying. I couldn't believe it that there were people who honestly were really frightened of flying in the sense, like so many, because I love it. I'm so excited. I get on a plane and the excitement of the engine, the takeoff, looking out the window, seeing the stuff, it's where I'm going. It's so exciting. So in my mind, I was like, well, what must you be thinking, or what must be going on for you to have this experience? And sometimes people would pause and look into the distance. Sometimes they would start moving their hands in a certain way. Sometimes they might start tapping their body. They would do something else, sigh, just pause, or they might close their eyes. And these are, of course, unconscious moments. And this is wonderful because anytime one of those happens, that's where our skill set comes in. Those are the wedges that we can notice and open up. And actually, just investigating these, a very, very large percentage of the time, it will help someone. The other day, I was with someone, they said, I'm struggling with my sense of purpose. And I said, well, tell me more. And they will kind of struggle, and where do you want this to go? And eventually, in fact, even after a few seconds of a couple of questions, he was like staring and smiling. And I said, well, what's going on? And he's like, I'm a little bit confused. And he sat with it and we took some time with that. And the interesting thing is, just by being willing to contemplate the unconscious moment and sit with it, the moment where you're doing something, that something's happening automatically, we only need to, it's exactly like you said, there are lots of ways you can go precisely with something, a specific location, a specific time, a specific trigger, or just one specific thought, particularly when it's a kind of thought feeling that's just happening automatically. That's so automatic you don't even notice it. Wow. When someone can help you notice that and stay with it, this is even just for 2 or 3 seconds, this can be the wedge that opens up everything else. Because then they're like, I guess there was a bit of fear. I was thinking if I have a purpose, then there's maybe fear about things that can happen. Okay, so what do you want to have happen instead? Well, I want to have some impact. Okay, but I've been hesitating. Oh. So what would happen if you hesitated before having this kind of fear? Would that give you the kind of impact that you're looking for? And now can spend some time and help someone to go to move in the direction they want. And I think that's what I really love about our work, is because whereas most of the world will give a list of conscious things to do, this is the conscious list, these are the generalities, these are behaviors not to do, these are the behaviors to do. We only have to look around. Somebody wants to lose weight, hundreds of books, hundreds of tips, hundreds of advice, hundreds of steps. It's overwhelming. But what if there was just a certain thought or feeling pattern, just something automatic inside, maybe several of these, but maybe one, or maybe several, that when you can sit with them and observe them, they can transform. Imagine what that would do for you.
What if there was someone that would actually listen? If there was someone that actually paid attention to you, right? It's really interesting. I've been experimenting with just getting to know interesting AI technologies that are in there. I wouldn't say they're not taking baby steps. They're taking some pretty impressive steps already. and it's a lot of fun. But and of course, it crossed my mind, can what we do, can that be programmed into some kind of an artificial intelligence procedure? And it's interesting because what I found is when I try to go fully online, even though these conversations online, I'm perfectly comfortable with it. There are many, 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 many of my clients that were struggling with the concept, even though I did have quite a few. I still have pretty much a full practice to attend clients, even when it's only online. I did feel that I'm losing out on helping a lot of people because they would just not feel the human connection, and especially in the kind of work that we do, which, as you described, it's uh, it's such a huge transformation from when I started out. From when I started out, I did have kind of a computer program sitting in the back of my head. Hey, you walk the person through this, you get them to do this, you have them do this one thing, then another thing, and sometimes I would lose clients because they didn't fit the the structure, the strategy that my teacher taught. Well, what I thought my teacher taught originally, because obviously there was a lot more flexibility and a lot more expertise than what I could pick up on in the first few years of my practice. But I did have kind of a cookie cutter strategy to attend clients. It kind of reminds me of a silly old joke that I remember. They make the first someone comes up and says, "Hey, I came up with a great idea. This is an automatic hair cutting machine. It's just over there. It has the scissors inside. It has the blades. You stick your head in, and it just cuts your hair." And the friend that this is being told just looks at the guy and says, "Well, but uh, aren't the heads of people like different sizes and different shapes? Isn't every head different?" Well, yeah, before they use it, of course, the first time.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's, but over the years, I'm just so glad that I have really understood the importance of fully paying attention to the person in front of you, to really listen to their story and their way of creating their problem. And it's sometimes it's fascinating. I mean, yeah, when I first learned to appreciate the value of a client and their point of view, I did that as, again, still as a strategy. That was like 8, 9 years ago, already like 7 years into my practice. But over time, I realized that it is actually fascinating thing. Just the fact that a person can use this amazing tool that is our brain, they can use it in a way that um, ends up creating some kind of a malfunction. Because this thing, it's incredibly powerful. It is very, very powerful to solve problems, to adapt to certain situations. It is an incredibly powerful tool. So it is just fascinating to explore and discover how exactly can a person create a problem, especially when that same person, that same human being, is incredibly efficient at other things. Maybe they're not appreciating the other thing. Maybe they don't realize just how efficient they are. Maybe they are not spending their time, being grateful for their efficiency. But it's still just fascinating how the mind of one particular person creates a mess in a certain situation while they are being so good in other areas of their lives.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's really interesting as well. I mean, when you were talking about dealing with one thing at a time, because you only need to deal with or have maybe one thing that's of genuine interest to you handled, maybe even just through one thought to make a difference. But it's really interesting because most of the time, and there are obvious exceptions, but most of the time when people are having problems, those problems are created inside their mind. You know, we're not talking about where somebody has, genuinely had some physical thing that's occurred to them, or some kind of tragedy, of course. But and even then, there are different ways in which they can sort of process that and relate to the world as as a result of it. But I realized this with the people I've mentored in business or people who want to get into business. And some people are worried about what other people might say in the world, and they feel that maybe they didn't get approval from a parent or had some other difficulties or whatever it is. And it is entirely a story inside their own mind. It has no basis in reality. Whereas other people who have maybe even less skills or less experience in them, who simply don't have that story, just have another story that the world is full of opportunity, and they'll go, and if I make a mistake, well, that's it. I'm going to learn from it, you know. And so they have a little program that's playing the growth mindset. Well, I can't do this, but if I carry on, one day I will be able to do it. And the other person just has a mind of like, well, I can't do it. I'm not good enough, or I've tried it once, it doesn't work. And it's really interesting once you because there is at least more research coming through on this one around the growth mindset. In fact, in the last couple of years, that just noticing, just becoming aware of those thought patterns inside yourself, or like even at the level of generality, not even as precisely as we're saying, where you can observe it and capture the moment, just becoming aware of that can be the wedge, the insight that comes from that. If you sit with it, the insight that comes with that can be a wedge to open up a whole life of change. And I find that very, very exciting, very inspiring. It's very, very optimistic.
Absolutely. And, what we're saying, that is not to say that you cannot focus on actual generalized concepts. I mean, just in general, practicing mindfulness, practicing whatever your faith is, a connection to whatever higher power you consider. That is that is a very general practice most of the time. Meditation practice, mindfulness practice, or just as you said, and one of the exercises that I love to do comes to mind, which is whenever you feel like your mind is becoming a little bit overactive, just pause for a moment, allow those thoughts to exist, and recognize them for the stories they are. Because reality is. Reality is what it is. Reality just exists. Anything else that you add that is beyond reality, it's just a story in your mind. If I look at you right now, what I can see is you blinking a little bit more, possibly processing. I know that that is part of what you. But if I add the story, like I don't know that red ball is on top of your bookshelf is probably something valuable. That's a story that I just made up. If I say that's it's ugly, it's another story, different story that I just made up. If I if I add anything that I could not describe as I'm seeing as a physical reality, it's just my interpretation. And this is very obvious when I say it like this, but sometimes being inside our own stories, they can really sound very believable. It really sound like it actually has the meaning that I ascribe to it. I can actually think that, one thing is really valuable up here on my shelf. Some of them to my new office. But, I can still say, oh, this is very valuable. Well, even that, it might be real for me. And if it's something that inspires me, if it's something that makes me, connect to the world in a better way, it might even be a useful story. It's nothing more than a story. And especially when we think about stories that are negative, that create fear, that create blockage, that create slowing us ourselves down, that make us avoid certain situations, that hold us back one way or another. Recognizing those as stories can be extremely valuable, positive, and freeing yourself from them can be very liberating.
Yeah, yeah, it's beautiful, Oresztesz. I 100% agree. And I think the interesting thing is that whether it's working on yourself or if you are starting to observe this in someone else, you'll notice the funny thing is these moments can become quite obvious, for yourself when you pause and maybe look away or sigh or your breathing changes. And if you can stay with those moments, maybe you start to space out naturally. Maybe you start to sort of, the moment something difficult comes up, you realize that your body starts to space out, your mind starts to space out, or something difficult comes along, and suddenly you notice a tendency for your mind to feel tired. If you can see this coming, if you can observe it, it's wonderful. In fact, I had a client who was challenged with their energy levels and all kinds of levels. Things were labels being applied. And all I got him to do was, I noticed that the moment he had a stressful thought, even talking about this, his body would slump, his energy would go, and literally the energy would drain from his body. And he would interpret that as not having any energy. And I got him to just sit with that for a few seconds when it came up. And eventually the pattern dissolved very quickly within a session. And his energy started coming back. And he was very surprised. His doctors were very surprised. But, that's the wonderful thing about your mind. Like you say, Oresztesz, it's so powerful. The key is just to realize, if you just realize that it has been programmed over time with certain tendencies. Some we learnt from our parents, from the environment. Some they just got kind of like programmed into us. Some are helpful, some are not so helpful. So the key is, once you know that, you can become really curious and excited to notice, when's the next kind of opportunity going to come up? And that raises your level of awareness. And then, rather than it being like a technique that you're doing for 20 minutes or half an hour in the day or trying to meditate, you can just observe a moment when something comes up and sit with it a moment. And if you wish, of course, you can reach out to a coach or hypnotist if you want to. What they do is they can just help you notice those, locate them, and speed up that process of going through that. And then add some other stuff around refinements in terms of the making the direction you want to go in compelling. But, really what we're dealing with here are, of course, mindful matters.
Absolutely, absolutely, and of course, You can ask us. I certainly know two very good coaches, hypnotists that can certainly help you. I'll be happy to send you their 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 contact information. If should you choose to improve your life, well, one way or another. And yeah, so recognizing stories, recognize your own stories. Also free yourself, as Richard mentioned, feel free to recognize that most of the reactions, especially the emotional reactions of people, these are not usually necessarily logical. Sometimes these are accompanied by an emotional strength to them, either love, commitment, positive connection to something. If I say something is important, something is valuable for me, or when I see that something I love being threatened, it might be anger, it might be fear, it might be jealousy, it could be many, many negative things. Recognize them that those are usually also stories happening inside the other person, which can then give you perspective, which can allow you not to take many things personally, which can then allow you to feel free in your interactions and be able to move in the most positive way possible. So this is what I wish for you. I hope you take away at least the awareness to notice stories, notice your own stories, and some of the strategies that we have mentioned, either sitting with it or just practicing the awareness of the existence of stories and the liberation that comes with it when you recognize them, when you understand how they work and that they exist. And there is one thing which is objective reality, and then there is another, which is the stories, the individual version of each human being that lives in that objective reality. So I hope you enjoy this little perspective, even if it was only to give you a few deeper sighs and understand at least a few situations, make yourself feel more free, more liberated. Then I think we've done our job here for this session. Thank you for staying around all the way to the end, and I hope we'll see you on our next session. Make sure that you are subscribed, make sure that you click like, make sure you share this episode with people that may be a little bit too stuck in their stories. And I look forward to seeing you on our next episode. Take care.